Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this FP&A Trends webinar, where today we'll be looking at navigating uncertainty, a great case study we have for you today. Just to let you know, we have nearly 400 people joining us from over 90 countries. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Hans Gobin, for those who don't know me. I am your facilitator for today, and I am FP&A Trends Ambassador as well. So welcome to this webinar. Let me quickly share with you what have we got for you in terms of agenda today. So today we will look at Chuy's holdings, before and after story. So again, the whole of this session is dedicated to the case study of Chuy's. The path to digital FP&A. So how were they before? How are they now? What did they do in terms of people's tools, data, processes? We will then look at technology as a key enabler for transformation and navigating under uncertainty. We will move on to look at planning in times of uncertainty. So here we will look at the key lessons learned. We will do some conclusions and recommendations, and then finally we will move to our Q&A session. It is now a good time for me to introduce to you my panelists. So Natalie and Tom, if you can join us on the webcam, please, and come off mute whilst I'll introduce you both very quickly. So our key speaker today is of course, Natalie Harden, Vice President of Finance and Investor Relations at Chuy's Restaurant, based in Austin in the USA, and as you can see, very, very well experienced. And today she will take us through how she managed to navigate through all of these uncertainties we've had over the last few years and her business case. Natalie, great to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure, Hans. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And of course, we have Tom Peff, who's director at Workday, is based in San Francisco in USA. Lots and lots of experience in finance, operational, as well as investment roles. And today, Tom is going to take us through how technology helps us manage under times of uncertainty. Tom, great to have you with us today.
Yeah, likewise. Look forward to it.
Brilliant. So we have a fantastic set of slides and of course, a lot of insight in terms of how Chuy managed through uncertainty. At this point in time, panelists, can I ask you to turn your webcam off? I've got a few housekeeping slides to go through, and then we will dive straight in to our session. So thank you. Quick one about myself. I'm not going to go through in any sort of details, so please, read it at your own leisure. Just a quick shout out to FP&A Trends Group. We are now in 29 cities. The last two chapters we've opened is in Austin and Miami. And of course, as you know, it's all about sharing knowledge around FP&A. We also do FP&A education, our website, there's plenty of material there, and FP&A strategic advisory and research. So please look us up. So for those who don't know, what have we got in store for you? It's an hour worth of webinar. We have two great polling questions. So we want to know how you're managing your planning under uncertainty. So please participate via the chat box, via the polling question. We have an interactive Q&A session at the end of the session. So please send us your question via the chat box. Tell us who it is going to and what it is. We will answer, we've got about 6 to 8 minutes to answer them. Those we haven't answered today, we will answer to you directly via email. So please don't hesitate, send your question and keep sending them. The presentation is available in the handouts for you to download, so please do so. If not, you will receive a copy and a link to the recording of the presentation as well afterwards. When I close the session, you will get a feedback survey session popping up, so please give us 30 or so seconds of your time so you can tell us how we did and what else you would like to hear from us in the future. A big thank you to our technology sponsor today, Workday. So thank you for making this webinar available to us, and we all know what Workday is all about, helping us solve our greatest business challenges. Thank you very much, Workday. So I've got some introductory slide that I would like to take you guys through as to, you know, the key aspect of managing planning under uncertainty. This is a great graph that we see from adapted from Paul Shoemaker, and here you can see the predictability span, which is the blue side, and how it is shrinking with more and more uncertainty we have. So only within that predictability span can traditional planning work. Outside of it, there are multiple uncertainties and multiple futures. This is where scenario planning comes into play. And what are the key challenges for our FP&A teams lately? Of course, you know, we have to move away from our one approach, one scenario, or 2 or 3 scenario, which is best case, middle case, worst case, into much more of data-driven decision, agility, adaptability, faster actions, and of course, the shareholders are becoming more and more demanding as well. So we need to move to on-demand multiple scenario planning. How do we do this? Of course, we talk about integrated FP&A, which is harmonizing our 3 key planning processes. So strategic planning, financial planning, and operational planning and forecasting. XP&A is what Gartner speaks about, really, but here we're going one more step. So horizontally and vertically integrating all of these planning processes. So without further ado, I will ask our speaker, Natalie, to join us and take us through her case study. So Natalie, over to you.
Thank you, Hans. Just something to introduce Chuy and kind of explain the audience what Chuy is all about. Chuy is publicly traded Mexican full-service casual dining concept. It's actually known for its made from scratch Mexican dishes. It's really fun and really affordable place to eat. We are geographically dispersed in about 17 states. We have close to 100 units right now. And we're really known in Texas, South, Southeast, and Midwest of the United States. We projected to have about 420 million in revenue in fiscal year 2022. So it's pretty fun company. It's well known in the United States. Great concept. You know, I'm sure many on this call can relate to the hardship restaurant industry and retailers experience with COVID throughout the globe. It was extremely challenging for Chuy's as being you know, just any other restaurant. And really, the biggest challenges we experienced is the business contracted about 7-8%. We had to really rethink on a dime how to change our operations to be able to survive and continue, not just during that COVID environment, but after that. And really during that time, the 3 things that we discovered is safety, value, and convenience. Those 3 pillars helped us persevere through the pandemic and helped us be a better company on the back end. So that's something about Chuy's. And you know, as far as our journey of development and journey of development and kind of where we started and where we are now, you know, we started our journey actually prior to the pandemic in 2018. We started looking at various ways for us to optimize our financial reporting. And some of the challenges we experienced during that time is really static Excel-based reporting. All the data is really in various different disaggregated places. It was really hard to access it. We had to either ask IT to run our reports, then manually aggregate those reports. A lot of manual schedules that we had to correlate and compile. Everything was disconnected. Planning process reside in various different systems. It was really hard to consolidate and really spin it on a dime. And obviously we were not able to run any scenarios. Most of the time was really spent on data compilation and validation, and really not focused on analysis. And really where we are now is dynamic daily KPI reporting through business intelligence platforms. It's really more on demand. It's not pushing report to other people because we think they need them. It's really those people understanding the need for information to be able to access those reports, financial data, and analysis. It's a decision that we can make based on data. It's all data driven. We're able to run various scenarios. So we're not really stuck in a static reporting. It's really more ad hoc. We're able to roll the forecasts with various frequency, weekly, period, quarter, annual frequency. It's really more on demand and almost a click of a button, which is really fun to do. It's definitely helped be more agile. We have one source of data, reliable, whether it's operational, financial data, and it really helps us because we don't have to spend the time of reconciling the data, operational, understanding our labor in this set of reports versus that set of reports. We know we have one data repository and we can rely on that data, and we know it's valid, and it speaks and it agrees to one another. And it's more collaborative approach. It's not really silos. We have various departments in Chuy, starting from the operations, marketing, finance, technology. All parts of the company participate in the planning process, utilizing the same platform. It's all coalesced to where we can really spin it and see the results instantly without spending time on rolling this up. And it's really, we focus now on strategy and analysis, not so much on data compilation and consolidation. And this model that we have right now, it's really easy for us to adapt to change. We can spin on a dime and make great decisions. And really, kind of that's where we are now. And obviously, it is a journey to get from one step, kind of where we were back in 2018 prior to pandemic, and kind of where we are now and where we were actually just before the pandemic started. There's a few key aspects. Is the people that you have, your FP&A team, the talent that you have, their skill set. It's obviously the use of technology, the use of more modern planning tools, business intelligence platforms to support your environment. It's data organization. It's really key, right? To know where your data is, to make sure data is valid, easy to use in analysis. And so that's truly foundation. And obviously, it's also a process. What processes you currently have, what financial models you currently have, right? How those models could be optimized, automated, engineered to fit the process. And one thing that is you don't see on the slide that's really key in the center, it's really the culture of the company that able to support this data transformation and technology. So that just to kind of brief to walk you through the cycle.
Brilliant. Natalie, thank you very much. It's great to see the journey there, which is fantastic as to where you were. And of course, you started that journey in terms of your transformational journey quite early as well, which is great. One question I have in specific that I would like to, get a little bit more insight into some of the specific challenges that you guys had during the COVID period and how you dealt with it. Can you share a few examples with us, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure many on the call experienced the same challenges throughout the COVID, whether it's a restaurant company or, a grocery store or any other retailer. It was really challenging times. And the worst about it is that we really have to change and pivot the entire operational model on a dime in a matter of day, and government restrictions and imposed on us during that time, it's really happened instantly. And so in a matter of one weekend, we have to figure out what the new business model should be, how we're able to support that business. As I mentioned earlier, the business contracted about 70%. We were a full service dining concept with about 7,500 square foot box that we were operating, full of people and vibe, right? And so what we ended up over the weekend is off-premise to go business only that we didn't really even know we could support. Our business, off-premise business prior to COVID was about 12 to 14% of the total volume that we did. And so obviously, given that, off-premise business definitely expanded tremendously, more than double, to be honest with you. And we were doing great, but how to get there, right, and how we got there in a matter of weekend was tremendous. We had to figure out which stores make sense for us to continue to operate under this off-premise model, which stores may not make sense to keep open, trying to figure out how we can support the restaurants that we do have with the 70% less in business, what furloughs or layoffs may look like, right? In the end, cash is a king. And so we had to make those decisions really quickly. And to be honest with you, I have to give our hats to the operators that were able to figure this out, to make this happen, right? And in the end, in this really tough environment, we have to figure out how do you go from those full restaurants, right? And how you able to support this to-go model. And what we ended up doing, we actually ended up converting parking lots into dining rooms, right? And trying to figure out technology like texting technology to figure out how to improve notification between us and the customer. And so it's truly, if it takes about 45 minutes or so to turn a table at the dining room, I mean, we were turning those parking spots in a matter of minutes. It was truly amazing what we're able to do. But if you think about it too, during this horrible time, our operators, they were concentrating on making this business happen with the few people that they had. And so that's really all they could think about. And so our finance team, our accounting team, and our technology team in the back office really put a lot of work to figure out how we can give information to the operators in kind of more real-time fashion on demand to give them operational metrics that they need to be able to understand where they are, how they're operating, and most importantly, what tomorrow going to look like. As I mentioned, the horrible restrictions that we had, we were having those restrictions that were rolling out by state, and we're multi-unit different states. It impacted each store differently, and expectation of the volumes, right? And whether dining rooms are open or they close down, and those changes were rolling in. And I can tell you in a matter of 5 months, we went from off-premise back to dining business. So we really had to spin in a dime, and technology and modern planning tools, right, truly helped us to understand what those possible scenarios and business outcome may look like on the different scenarios of shutdowns and restrictions.
Wow. Navigating through uncertainty, a great example there. Tom, anything you would like to add? What are you seeing? What have you seen in terms of challenges out there that Natalie hasn't mentioned, or we haven't had time to go through?
I know. I mean, and it varies, business to business. The impact's a little different, but you just saw, two big things that pretty much touched everybody, and that's the sort of severity, sort of scope of the change, right? And so, years past, the scenarios and the what ifs you're running, it's just tweaking some things on the margin. What if we grow 6%? What if we grow 7%? Kind of thing. The swings and the huge swaths of outcomes that you're having to sort of go between and consider just enormous. What happens if top line goes to 0, and what happens if that persists for 6, 9, 12 months? Okay, turn it back on this week, kind of, because we can open, and not to mention, and some of that has moderated out a little bit in terms of the top line demand expectation, not quite so volatile, but you're still seeing labor supply, inflation, pricing stress, and capacity and availability issues persist. So that sort of volatility is here to stay. And then the other thing is all of that sort of speaks to cadence too, right? And so like years past, you could roll out an annual budget and cruise by for the year. By the end of the year, sure, it's not really relevant. But you go to an environment now where I need a weekly cash flash because I need to know if I can make payroll or if I'm in breach of my covenants. And so I think it's just up the level of stress effectively on the finance and planning function, and that's thrust it to kind of the forefront. And across all of those vectors that Natalie was speaking about, people, process, technology, it's just, I mean, you got to get the fat out. It has to be lean operating, high performing machine. Otherwise, you're in real trouble. So I think we've witnessed folks that had good sort of planning DNA and process going into the pandemic. Aside from the impacts on their, separate from the how the things impacted your business, at least you as a finance function are prepared to provide, like you said, operators the data that they need to make. I mean, what are incredibly tough decisions. I mean, these are difficult lines that finance is helping an organization walk in terms of, furloughs, business surviving, cash to make payroll. That, I mean, it's as stress, I think is the right word, and walking a difficult line, right? You have to understand the financial implications of all these decisions that you're going to make that are material.
Absolutely spot on there, Tom. And of course, survival of the fittest in essence, as well as anything else, because we've seen so many businesses wrap up over the COVID period. And guess what? It's not over, because we're going through the war in Russia and Ukraine, and the interest rate and energy rises. So
the big R word,
exactly. And the fact that we can and we should be able to play scenarios instantaneously and look at what's going to happen, interest rate going up, petrol prices, etc., and how is the business going to react, is absolutely very, very important. So thank you both very much for that. Let's move on to our polling question. So please stay on, and let me just quickly launch this polling question that we have for, bear with me a second whilst I do that. So polling question for you today. So please vote. I've just launched the question, and the question is, we looked at challenges. So which of the following internal challenges does your organization face in its execution of planning today? Processes are too slow, manual, not enough experience with modern approaches to planning. So all of these good things we've talked about, not enough experience, lack of engagement and ownership across stakeholder. So culture really. And fourthly, tools are not flexible enough to adapt. And bad data, we looked at data, multiple versions of truth. If you can vote, please, and I'll run through these again. Which of the following internal challenges does your organization face in its execution of planning today? Processes are too manual, first. Not enough experience, second one. Third, lack of engagement and ownership. Fourth, tools are not flexible enough. And finally, bad data, multiple versions of the truth. I will now close the voting, and I will share the results with everyone. At the same time, read it. 38% of our voters have said processes are too manual, slow. 10% not enough experience. 12% lack of engagement and ownership. 16% not flexible, and 23% are talking about bad data. Natalie, can I come to you first? Any insight into what we're seeing?
Yeah, this is completely in line with my thought process as well. As I mentioned earlier, like a lot of processes in a standard FP&A finance environment are manual, which is really hard to obviously change and run scenarios and adapt to constantly changing information. So I think that's process slow manual. I think that's probably complete makes sense to me. And bad data, multiple version of the truth. It's I've been hearing that, and some of the issues that Chuy's had back a while back as well is you have different systems that have the data. Maybe that data is actually valid in itself, right, to a certain degree. But when you try to consolidate that up to your financial statements, to kind of look at overall financial statements and trying to dig and drill that down to individual transactions, there's definitely could be truth reconciling. Labor, for instance, could be one of the challenges that I'm sure a lot of restaurant companies might be facing, because you got POS system that has all the labor hours and rates, and and wages information, but maybe what you ended up having in your general ledger at the end of the period might not be quite reconciled to that underlying POS information. And so it could be the timing issues that you have to work out. But I think obviously having the valid data that you can rely in one spot that you can use is definitely critical.
Fantastic. Thank you for this insight. Tom, anything you would like to add, please?
Yeah, I think you need a D, all of the above option there. And, you know, this sort of process of slower manual stem from, you know, symptomatic from all of the other elements, right? So if I have multiple systems, I'm copying and pasting, moving data between them. And so they're, you know, those elements are certainly linked.
Yeah.
Hey, Hans, when we have a minute, we had some great sort of operational questions that came through on the chat here. If we want to just pass those over to Natalie, I'm happy to tee one or two up when we got a minute. Maybe as she goes through some of the
of course, if it's relevant to any of the section coming up, me and you can field those to Natalie, absolutely. Otherwise, we've got a session towards the end anyway that we can take those as well. So let us now hide this and let us now move on to our next session, which is on Teams. So I will disappear, and Tom, if you want to disappear as well, and let Natalie take over off the camera, that is.
Stage is all yours, Natalie.
Thank you, guys.
And you had a bunch of Chuy's customers that dropped nice notes.
Oh, that's terrific. That's fantastic to hear as well. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier on how to, right, there's really 4 critical things I think that allow us to advance our financial planning and analysis in this digitized world. And so number 1 to start with, obviously, is people and FP&A team. And the key components there is the people structure. You know, with introduction of a lot of technology, and nowadays finance cannot really function without technology. Having people on the team that are knowledgeable in some of the modern planning tools, such as Adaptive Insights, business technology, business intelligence platforms, whether it's a Power BI, Tableau, you know, there's many other platforms out there. Basic understanding of a database structure, be able to run queries, utilize an Excel to its capacity, whether it's a Power Queries or any other queries, and be able to use obviously pivot tables and all that great stuff that Microsoft Office allows you to do without investing a lot of money. Having that expertise on the team is obviously key. I mentioned the database and the data and what it does for FP&A planning, information technology, and servicing your operators. For you to really utilize that, right, you obviously have your IT department that will give you the great infrastructure and tools, whether it's a database, SQL database, and all the environment. But the key thing as well on the FP&A team is to have a data architect, data scientist, right, that able to really prepare the data for ease in use and analytics, you know, because as you can imagine, being Chuy's transactional company, we have millions upon millions and millions of transactions at the daily, hourly level, at the minute level. So really data mining becomes a key, and be able to structure that in a way to where you can run analysis of that data instantly, right? So to be able to architect that structure, or another good example of the data scientist or data architect, its application at FP&A team at Chuy's, is creation of a sales forecast, right? Sales forecast, it's a tremendous animal. It's a big thing, right? It has multiple components, but if you truly understand the drivers of your sales and able to come up with a great algorithm, a formula that really drives your sales, that person definitely able to help you create that architecture, right? Create a processes in your database to transform your data, and be able to set you up a great foundation to use that data in your day-to-day or period analytics. So that's really on a team structure skill set. Obviously, training is a key. You're sometimes unable to get the people that know it all, and you probably can get those people, but you're able to definitely spend the time with your team, be able to transfer the knowledge using the webinars, industry practice, And so obviously training is a critical piece of any team. Organizational culture is number one. It's really spans outside of the FP&A team as a whole. Finance, in my mind, it's not just the FP&A, few people that runs this organization. Finance is really cross-functional in its nature. It touches every single department in the company, whether it's operations, marketing, accounting, and so on and so forth. And it's really who the users are of your information, right? And whether you have a support from your leadership to be able to actually use the data to drive your decisions. And so it really needs to be the right culture. And I can tell you for Chuy's, COVID was really that factor, right? That catalyst to help us understand what data really means and what it can do for the organization. So that's really on the team. And the really second how-to that we have is use of modern planning tools. And so Adaptive Insights sponsoring this webinar is obviously one of the great example of that. You really can't do much without technology, especially being a multi-unit organization. You have hundreds of general managers that run in your stores and trying to make decisions out in the field. You have transactional data underlying your business. So you truly need technology to manage all that. And a few pieces to mention, right? From the standpoint of planning tools, modern planning tools, is it allows you to create your full financial statement modeling, income statement, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. You can even go down to CapEx, equity. You can create the integrated model to where all those pieces are speaking together. It could be interconnected and supported by your one data source, right? Whether it's your point of sale that gives you all the KPI, operation KPI information, whether it's your Solomon, whether it's your general ledger, Solomon is for Chuy's general ledger database with all of your basic financial statement information. You can create all that in one planning environment to where it speaks to one another. It's really easy and flexible to use. You don't have to run reports, paste, copy, understand how that connects to your balance sheet, make some other manual inputs on the cash flow to make this all work, right? Everything is integrated in the same environment. And what's great about this environment too, right? It's really not isolated into those financial platforms that I just mentioned, general ledger, POS. It's really not that, right? You also have various ways of interacting with your company, with those departments that are supporting you, right? It's really collaborative in nature. For instance, Chuy's, we do have templates, right, that we introduce to people to be able to introduce and put in their inputs into our model, and everything is obviously fits well together. Experienced implementation team to make this all happen, because it is very complicated. Your financial model, it is complicated as it is, and obviously as you develop and use it more, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So have a great implementation team to make this happen in whether it's an Adaptive Insight or any other similar model planning platform is truly a key. And obviously the vision, what are you trying to do? What is the final outcome? Because there's all great tools out there, but they won't be as useful to you unless you know a clear application and a vision where you want to go with that. And
hey,
obviously,
before you carry on, I think me and Tom would like to delve a little bit more in some of your experiences there. I've got a question for you, and then I'll let Tom take over from me. So in terms of team, absolutely important. And you talked about data architect, data science, which is very, very new roles. What about the softer sort of skills, you know, the influencer, the storyteller, who plays that part within your team? Is it, how does it work within your environment, please?
Yeah, you know, I have a great team, excellent people on my team that have varied experience. I do have a lot of technology on my team, as I mentioned, that's really important to me. You know, we do have a data architect and science that's supporting us. We also have obviously an analyst, a manager of financial planning and analysis that leads a lot of implementation of new processes, automation of existing processes. and kind of working with the data that we kind of put together and it's ready for our analysis. And we obviously have an analyst to kind of help us support it. And we do have a storyteller, whether that myself, our Chief Financial Officer, Jen Howie, that help us do the storytelling and kind of drive the overall vision.
Very, very important these days. Tom, any question from you?
I do, and I'm sort of backstopped here by our audience out there, so keep them coming. We're gonna, Natalie, we've got such great stuff. We're gonna maybe like a lightning round type approach here. So buckle up. I guess first and foremost, you mentioned leadership support, right, from the top, and one of the questions came in. How do you pitch this to get FP&A budget for tools, technology, the people that you need? What was the ROI? And I mean, part of it stems from just, hey, look what you're asking me to do in these circumstances. But can you talk a little bit about where that pitch, where you got resistance, and how you're getting the budget? Maybe it's just we write the budget. So
yeah, that's really an excellent question, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it's really hard to explain to somebody as well. It's like, hey, I have this great thing. I think I can make it really automated and easy to go, but like, what does it really do? You mentioned about ROI. It's hard to sometimes put the dollars, right, to some of the invaluable things. I think it's a lot easier for the teams now post-pandemic, to be honest with you, because I think pandemic in itself is a great business case as to what those tools can do and how it help you transform, spin in a dime. And we've talked a lot about scenario planning and all these great things prior to the pandemic, right? I mean, it's an extremely valuable thing, but in a really stable environment, when you don't have those crazy geopolitical issues, right, and your inflation does not go from 3 to 20% of commodities, right, when your labor is just not rising 10% year over year, when everything is stable, it's really hard to make a case, to be honest with you. It truly is. You can introduce things such as automation that will help you reduce your people or put the people's effort that you have into more analysis, versus compilation of data. That's all great, but I think what we experienced in the last 2 years should be really a great way for the teams to sell what those tools can do.
And may I just add? May I just add there, Tom? It's how helpless organizations were during the pandemic because they just couldn't navigate those uncertainties. Right. Provide those scenario planning. That's another good thing to take to management to say, guys, of course we couldn't do it because we just didn't have the tools, didn't have the people, didn't have the technology. So that's one of those a great thing to take as well.
But Tom, one other thing to also mention, kind of a high level, that clear vision is a key. And so the way I approached it back in 2018 and actually through 2020, because I've been constantly improving and we've been adding to what we had, is really to kind of explain in a visual terms, right, what that future state may look like and what it will allow you to do. And flexibility and spin on a dime and scenario planning is one thing, right? How you're able to visualize your data almost real time, right, to help you make your decisions based on something that is constantly changing. So you really need a tool to be able to constantly have a pulse on your business, right, so that you can make those decisions. So.
Yeah, there was another great comment that popped up, which speaks to, I think, some of the granularity. We talked about being able to like look at, hey, the scope of massive changes, but this person points out, hey, one of the things that was so challenging for national or even global is impacts were not uniform, right? So South didn't even blink, East Coast, West Coast, still shut down, kind of thing. We saw that in healthcare providers too, and so some of the stresses that puts on businesses. Hey, a simple tops-down assumption just doesn't work. I need high fidelity, granular data. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your new store model and some of that store level forecasting that this sort of
yeah, absolutely. Restaurant business, retail, many other similar businesses are complicated because they are multi-unit and transactional. And like you said, in this environment, and for any multi-unit business, you cannot sometimes really make global assumption that will fit everybody, right? Whether it's a COVID and kind of how those restrictions were rolling in, like you said, by state, whether you're in California or Texas or Arizona, impacts everybody's different. So you need to be able to plan at the unit level. And so some of those things that we've accomplished during those times to kind of speak to more store level, more detailed driver still approach, right, is through obviously automation and business intelligence at the unit level, at the attribute level of your business, whether it's being geographically driven, such as state, whether it's driven, as you mentioned, new stores by the age of your store group, your store cohort, right? It's just obviously you need technology and automation to be able to manipulate and plan based on various sets of level attributes, right? Whether it's one individual stores, geographical, maybe it's not just a storage, but maybe it's also a volume, right, of your restaurant. Because if you think about some of the operational drivers that underlie, for instance, Chuy's model, right? You got productivity metrics, you have labor rates, you have inflation estimates, you have all various sorts of things that we're able to drive. And we drive in that not for the total company overall, but we drive in that based on, again, some of those store attributes of that business.
Fantastic, thank you. In the essence of time, let us move on to our next couple of slides. So over to you again, Natalie, on data organization.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that previously, that obviously this is what really enables the digital transformation. You need to have one source of truth, and you have all great teams, whether it's modern planning tools similar to Adaptive Insights, whether it's Power BI or Tableau. In the end, it's really fed from your database or data warehouse. You need to make sure that your data is valid, it agrees, and you're able to utilize all that in your planning. And so that's truly a key. And I'm sure a lot of businesses on this call, if they don't really have efforts put into organizing their data and have really good environment set up, this is really number one thing I would suggest you do. Obviously, having a great database warehouse, whether it's a SQL based or any other based database, it really provides a place to where you can stage your data, be able to run various processes, transformation processes. As I mentioned, like sales forecast and many other transactional things, we actually do that within our database. So we actually do a lot of transformation and calculations and organization of data that we use in our analytics, whether it's a real-time analytics or close to real-time analytics, such as daily data, daily forecast, daily rolling forecast for our operators to help them manage their day-to-day staffing needs, for instance, based on volumes of business. So that's truly key. And having one source of truth, proven data that you don't have to come back and revalidate, that you can just use in the later on processes, right? You can use it in your planning through planning platforms such as Adaptive Insights. You can use that into your visual tools that you can help you visualize your analytics, Tableau, Power BI, etc. And so that's truly the foundation.
And Natalie, a quick question from myself on this is, how did you organize that? Was it all done internally with the skill set you had, or did you have to outsource or get people in, or how did that work?
We have a really great information technology team. And so honestly, a lot of stuff has been done internal. And obviously, it's been a process. Started early on and you just add on pieces. I mentioned that we ended up acquiring this great talent that has a lot of experience with the data science, and also data organization analytics that we actually engaged in late 2020. And so he actually helped us since then until now do a lot of things within our database environment to help us automate and kind of see what we actually can do with our operational data. And we're not near done, and so we have still a lot of projects to go.
Quick plug here for your vendor sponsor, Workday Adaptive Planning. But Natalie, so coming into this on the planning side, you had never used, or your team had never used Workday Adaptive Planning before, right? That was sort of learning as you go. And you want to talk a little bit about that curve?
Yeah, we've back in 2018, we kind of started the journey. We knew that we had to change, right, from kind of a state that we were in back then, manual state mostly. We engaged with several vendors, including Adaptive Insights, and I really had no previous experience with Adaptive Insights. Obviously, did have some exposure to modern planning tools. And we've engaged with different vendors in the process of trying to figure out the best vendor for us. And so we ended up with Adaptive Insights. It's been a process ever since, Tom. Ever since 2018, obviously, we started with kind of simple model and then just kept on adding and kept on figuring a way with the help of different analysts, whether it's your team, right, or it's external consultants. Let's utilize this.
Great. Hans, are you right there? It sounded a little back.
No, my speaker went off very briefly there.
You look good.
There was a great question coming from one of our, and I think Natalie, you just answered that in the sense of, how do you teach your team technology? And you just took us through, it's not about, whatever platform it is. It's about that journey. You all learn on the journey. You all learn from each other, as well as the tool provider and the implementation sort of
Right.
guys. So fantastic. So your last slide here, I think Natalie's on processes. Why don't you take us through, and then we'll take some more questions.
Yeah, sure. And I think I've kind of spoken to a lot of this, in the last 20, 30 minutes. But the key thing, obviously, on the processes, especially utilizing the technology and what it can do, those modern tools for you, is to know your financial model, because each, I'm sure, listener on this call that do have financial models, they have some sort of financial model. It could be complicated, it could be very simple, but you start with what you have. You consult, there's many great consultants out there and implementers and people like Tom here on the call that can help you visualize what your models may look like digitized, right, within those platforms. And so there's great people that can help you do that. And that's what Chuy's did back in 2018 and through the course of the next few years, is digitizing the models that we had. And we do have many different models. It is a bit complex what we have, because I've been mentioning throughout that we actually do plan at a bit granular level. We are driving our business, whether it's a labor with operational metrics, productivity measures, rates, and it's all rolling out kind of to the high level model. We actually also utilizing Adaptive Insights in this planning environment for our street view model. The model that we kind of use for our financial guidance, and everything is interconnected, and you're able to kind of reconcile it back and truly understand, hey, this higher level model that leads us forward, right, and kind of really strategic thinking and going out there, we can actually reconcile that back to more operational granular model to truly understand what's driving our business strategically going out 5 years out. And so that's truly the key. Obviously I kind of mentioned as far as the integrated process, right? You have a strategic component. You also utilizing your operators, your departments throughout your kind of corporate office, right, to drive your model as well, because you do have a lot of things that right, but there's a lot of information inputs that you would want your operators to do. So we're trying to take this collaborative approach and introduce the templates and give those inputs down to our operators, to the managers that are actually running a store, kind of getting their input. It is, as I mentioned more than a few times, right, it's not just interconnected, but it's all driver-based. Because if your model is driver-based, that's really what helps you to run your scenarios, to understand how your business can evolve, and truly you can goal seek to the desired outcome. If you know where you want to be, whether it's a cash that you're trying to solve for during the pandemic, and it's all driver-based at the any granular level, right? You're able to understand how my drivers need to change for me to achieve my outcome. So you can make those intelligent decisions going forward. Give you definitely agility and flexibility in COVID, but also in the environment, as you mentioned, that we have now with rising interest rate, inflation that is at the 40-year high, it definitely helps you understand how you need to manage your business.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I'm just thinking of time, guys. So I'll just move to our next session, which is the polling question. Just a reminder, guys, so please keep sending your questions. We will answer a few of them today. The rest, of course, via email. Let me just launch this question now. We want to hear from you as to, which of the following changes or investment has your organization made to its planning over the past 2 years? Invested in new planning tools or adapted existing planning tools? Revise the overall planning approach. Second answer. Third answer, revise which teams were involved in planning. And then finally, increase forecasting cadence or frequency. If you can vote, please. So which of the following changes or investment has your organization made to its enterprise planning over the past 2 years? Invested in new planning tools? Or adapted old ones, revised overall planning approach, revised the teams, or finally increase forecasting cadence. And I'm now going to close it and share it with you. So 39% invested in new planning tools, 30% revised overall planning approach, 14% revised teams, 17% revised forecasting cadence. Natalie, can I ask you for a quick comment on this, please?
Yeah, so honestly, I would just probably tell you that it's four of those things. Obviously, investing in new planning tools, which I've mentioned, that's something that we have to do, and it was a great investment in retrospect for us. Obviously, to help with our overall strategy, and as far as increased cadency and frequency, we did have to do that during COVID. To be able to be more agile and flexible during that time, and even now during the highly inflationary times as well.
Thank you. And a quick one from you, Tom.
Yeah, I think folks were restricted to a single answer there, but I suspect everybody increased cadence, frequency, and we're as a vendor in the space, we got a lot of emergency calls beginning around March 2020 saying, hey, even if I've got the application, hey, you know what, I wasn't doing a forward balance sheet, but now I need to know, where I stand from a cash position every day kind of thing. And so people were looking at the granularity. We talked about that as well, the dimensionality, right? Hey, I have to reinvent my business, switch over to a, virtual model. There was all sorts of stresses that put on the people's planning, tools, and has been the case for, investment around that. The process, because like it was the first thing we said out of the gates, which is, in a challenging environment, planning comes to the top, because it's a certainty, a necessity for survival, really. So,
brilliant. Thank you very much, both. Let us hide this now. And Tom, it's time for you to take us through your set of slides quickly. So over to you, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead. If you want to go ahead and advance there. And I, joined Workday actually through the acquisition of Adaptive Insights 4 years ago. And so, many folks know Workday just from the focus on the HR, back office software. But increasingly, that's been expanding into the Office of Finance, so including things like budgeting, planning, forecasting by virtue of the acquisition of Adaptive Insights, but also a core general ledger product. And so what we've tried to facilitate for folks is some of what Natalie was talking about is the data movement around the enterprise from your transactional systems, be that the POS, the general ledger, your HCM, your HRIS, where your people are, to interface with both the data warehouse, the actuals piling up from all sorts of other operational systems, but then the interplay between that and the planning. And so one of the areas we've tried to zero in on just has become an incredible focus over the last couple of years is the people side of things. And that in what's now a crazy tight labor market, we saw record attrition, the quiet quit phenomenon, the scarcity of keeping something like a restaurant staffed, has kind of put that to the forefront. And it's a real joint shared pain point between HR and finance, and that's that ability to create a plan, starting from the ingestion of an existing roster. What do I have today? Typically, it moves sort of offline as that thing. Then you add a bunch of TBHs, what we're going to hire, what we will need if this, that, the other happens. That then moves to execution within the HCM system. And that's where, everything goes to crazy, because it's, when the rubber meets the road, no plan survives, right? And so there's this problem of, okay, well, we said we were going to do one thing, we needed to do another, and that's the horse trading, this rec for that, push in, pull out, couldn't find a head. That creates a big variance explanation and reconciliation problem for finance, really. And so how do I then, figure out and explain salary variance, and, what's the biggest line item in most, budgets? So that's made, for some bad outcomes for a lot of folks in terms of, hey, I just can't figure it out. It's too manual, that being the data audit. If you want to advance the next slide, what we've tried to facilitate for folks is both the ability to kind of drill down into sort of position level plans. Changes a little bit on with some operating models in retail and hospitality, where you kind of plan at a role level. Hey, I need this many clerks or this many, hostesses, whatever. You can advance the other slide just in the interest of time. And so what we try to facilitate is both that detailed planning, but also the reconciliation, this sort of holy grail on the back end of, hey, and this is, as a finance person, okay, here was the budget, here was the actual, now walk me through what happened, right? And that's, these pulled in and that had this impact from a dollar's perspective, these pulled out, we hired at different rates, that's the compression forces, that kind of thing. So that's been, very elusive for a lot of finance and HR teams, and something we've tried to focus on, just given, Workday's heritage in sort of the people arena, and now the sort of introduction into finance. So if you want to advance the next one. And that, also incorporates some of what Hans, you were talking about before, in terms of that getting into that operational plan detail, both from a workforce, what's going on in HR, as well as into sort of sales, demand, higher order demand planning, project planning, a lot of things that I would say are the supporting elements of a core GL financial plan. So, those can't operate in isolation. They really need, and that's some of what Natalie was talking about in terms of the interaction, interplay between different models. So.
Absolutely spot on there, Tom. Having shared with us one of the biggest nightmare for finance is headcount planning, and everybody doing their own thing somewhere else in a piece of spreadsheet, and then bringing it on to the more or less the FP&A or the integrated sort of planning here, which is great. It's a good time for us to do a little bit of lessons learned. Natalie, if you want to take us through, very briefly, what were the key lessons learned, and then we'll do some conclusions and take a few questions before we end.
Yeah, so a few really things is to truly understand your business and your key drivers, because that will help you understand what's important and how to plan on it, and cash is a king. During a volatile, uncertain time, increase your planning cadency, maybe quarterly, weekly, or even daily is warranted. More top-down approach might be needed to kind of give overall strategy and guidance. Scenario planning, we mentioned throughout, it's a truly key to great business decision. Technology, can't stay agile without technology, automation, and business intelligence on demand.
And Tom, what would you like to add in terms of lessons learned and what people should be thinking of more than anything else? I know we've only got a minute or so, but
no, you're okay. And actually, some CFO said this to me. I said, never let a good pandemic go to waste. And what they meant by that was the ability to do like an extreme control. Hey, what does my business look like if I have zero T&E expense? But also the importance of stressing those systems, right? Hey, it's just not going to survive if I can't, make these changes and operate in a lean and agile, and nimble. Because you're turning on a dime, Natalie kept saying, kind of way.
Brilliant. And here I'd just like to very quickly share this with you guys as to, so what are the key things to look out for? And a lot of these have already been mentioned. So guys, I'm not going to go through this in any sort of detail. So look at it. What can you do? How do you navigate through? What do you do? We talked about drivers, driver-based modeling, three-way modeling, integrated processes, people, and platform. So please do spend a bit of time and go through that.
Hans, I would be remiss, can't let us end without one question that popped into the audience, which just has to be answered. And that's, Natalie, is there a dish that folks need to check out when they're at Chuy's? What should they not miss?
You know, I can tell you that I would recommend every single dish, to be honest with you.
Come on.
So that's what I
It's not D, all of the above. That doesn't help.
No, your favorite, absolutely, Natalie.
I would have suggested our CKOs, Chuy's Knockouts, but unfortunately we just finished that program, but it will start up again next quarter. So I would just hang tight.
I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to field before we finish. We started slightly late, so it's a really good one here, Natalie, and Tom, you can answer this as well. Do you think the future CFO should hold degrees and experience in technology in additional to financial affairs? Natalie, your thought?
Tom, I'd let you go first.
Go on, Natalie.
You know, I would say, and in my experience with RC, they're getting dragged there, whether they like it or not. You know, it just becomes how you execute in this kind of environment. So good luck dodging it. If you don't have the expertise yourself, you know, you know, I found in our team, you need to hire that in. And it's not so much, like, I think the tools today are easy enough to learn, but there's a certain appetite or aptitude that you're looking for in terms of willingness to engage and go solve, you know, some of those technical challenges.
Natalie?
Yeah, I would say also, Tom, just to add to what you said, it's about the curiosity of your team. You know, you need to be curious to understand, hey, what does that look like? Like you said, everything is pretty easy to operate and navigate. The modern tools is really, you know, drag and drop in a lot of cases, but in some things you just really need to be curious to learn and research and find the answer.
And I think what we've seen and what we're seeing as well is that a lot of the finance degree have and are starting to have elements of technology already within them. So it doesn't mean to say that you know you go and study finance and technology at the same time. They're all into one now. So that is definitely going to answer this question. I've got another last question for you, Natalie. And again, very directly. Did Chuy's digital transformation initiatives initially come from top down or directed from CFO, or was it more bottom up and operational?
You know, I can tell you that it was probably more top down from the standpoint of we need to automate our processes just within the kind of a corporate realm environment to be able to create better plans. And obviously we engaged the operators and other departments in this process, but I would say probably started at the top and roll down.
Absolutely. And this is where the culture and making sure, you know, the ROI and knowing what it is going to bring in terms of achievement to the organization and navigating those uncertainty as well. So thank you both for answering those questions. So just a couple of last slides quickly to let you know that what is next. January 19th, we are talking about Inside the Crystal Ball, top 5 trends for FP&A in 2023 and beyond. So date for your diary. A good time to say thank you to everybody that's attended today. So great webinar. Thank you to our 2 panelists, Natalie and Tom, for great insight. Natalie, absolutely great case study, and you've shown us why, you know, transformation is key to the survival of the organization and how much, you know, a tool can do for us, Tom. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, of course, to Workday for sponsoring this as well. And thank you to our audience for participating. This is how you guys can keep in touch with us, so please do so. Just a quick reminder that when I close this session, you will get a feedback pop-up. So please spend 30 seconds and tell us how we did and what else you would like to hear from us in the future. So with this, I say thank you to you all for attending. Thank you to the panelists, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I hope to see you in the next one. So thank you very much, and goodbye. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.